Hi there, this is Amy Calandrino with Beyond Commercial. I'm joined today by Bennent Sebastian with Envision Construction. We're here today to give tenants an overview of the overall construction process. Many tenants underestimate the actual time to complete the construction and fail to take advantage of the concessions and time available that the landlord will give you if you're doing a really hefty project because they haven't figured that out before executing a lease. At Beyond Commercial, we work diligently to make sure we have a handle on what all it is that you're intending to do and bringing in professionals such as Bennent early on in the process. Today, we're going to give you an overview of those types of considerations that would be part of the construction process so you can get a better handle on timing, perhaps a move from another space, as well as what it is to get you into the other space. I have found working together with the professionals that we're able to get a much better result. So, Bennett, you want to give a little bit more information about yourself and your company?
Yes, hi, Amy. Thank you for having me again. So Envision Construction, we do a lot of tenant improvement work. So we work with a lot of tenants and as well as landlords that are doing relocations, expansions, consolidations. We do a lot of office build outs. So this is something that I'm very familiar with.
Oh, great. Oh, great. So first things first, let kind of take us through the process. I think sometimes before you jump into it, you have some initial planning that's part of the construction process for a tenant.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with your relationship with the tenant, what the tenant has told you, what they need, and you're able to at least determine from what they've told you that they need, how big of a space they should be looking at. And once you get to where you've narrowed it down to a couple of spaces, then the next logical step is to get somebody on the design side to come in and say, okay, we think we can get all your requirements in this space, or no, it's going to be difficult. So it's a good idea to get some kind of preliminary feedback, whether it's just from a contractor like myself. I can certainly do that, but a more professional opinion would come from an interior designer or architect that could do a test fit on that space for that tenant.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I found that sometimes we are overly optimistic. And so really getting a good idea of what your actual space needs are and what is needed to make the space fit for your needs, and then kind of reverse engineering depending on the municipality. All those types of things are very important. But it seems to me too, as you go through the process, you're able to more drill down a timeline. In the beginning, it's probably more vague, and you have to give bigger windows until you're able to drill down with specificity.
Exactly. I would say a typical job, a typical project is going to require a month to 6 weeks of design, probably at least that much in permitting, and 3 to 4 months in construction. So you're looking at 4 or 5 months for most smaller jobs, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 square feet. 6 months, a little bit bigger than that. But even a small job is going to require that same amount of time. So even if it's 1,000 square feet, you still got to go through that design process, the permitting process, which we can accelerate a little bit with the smaller jobs, but it's something that that needs to be kept a close eye on, and tenants need to understand that there's it's a process. So better to know that as soon as possible in the process.
And I've actually owned my own commercial building, and I've been through this process myself. And so, you have these general ideas, you might get something kind of sketched up, a preliminary fit plan. But then, actually getting the drawings done, a lot of times things come to light that you weren't thinking of before. Let's talk a little bit more about the design process as a whole.
Okay. So it starts with a program, which is basically, hey, client needs 4 private offices, 2 conference rooms, some cubicle space, break room, and that's sort of like your outline of what you need. From there, the design professional can put that into a schematic plan, which is basically just a base floor plan that just has layouts of walls basically. From that, you have a pretty good idea of what can work. And as a general contractor, can have I could probably get down to about plus or minus 20% as far as what that space is going to cost once I get to that point. Once we get to the point of having a schematic drawing done.
Mhm.
So we can provide some preliminary budgeting at that point, and from there it goes on into design development documents. You start putting in all of the uh, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all the finishes, all that stuff goes in there. And once those drawings are about halfway complete, then I can narrow down the pricing to about plus or minus 10% at that
Mhm.
point. And the final construction documents that are ready for permit set, that from start to finish, that takes about 6 weeks from concept to completion. And while the drawings are going in for permit, I can get 100% accurate number on that at that point on those drawings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing I wanted to point out is during the design process, if a contractor is involved early, we can give you some feedback on constructability as well as budget. So if we know early on what the client's budget is, we can provide feedback and guidance and kind of direct the design process to make sure it fits within the client's budget and it doesn't get over designed. So that's one of the
Yes, yes,
advantages.
yes.
One of the advantages of getting involved early.
Well, I think that having the contractor having a as a stakeholder, I guess, in the process and at the table during the very important inflection points where you're making decisions can be very important, because then that he or she can say, hey, maybe we can construct this a different way. Maybe you might want to consider this, because if you do this, this is going to require us moving the plumbing and a lot more systems. Perhaps we could do it this way instead of getting all the plans fully completed,
Yeah.
and then it's you're spending a lot more money having the other professional revise in reverse, and maybe you're on a tight time frame.
Yeah.
So having the entire team put together, and even often someone who's they're already familiar with each other and they have that good relationship, I
Exactly.
found to be beneficial as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. It makes everybody's job a lot easier when you've got a team working together early on.
Absolutely. So yeah, and it does. It takes a while to put all of that together, and very rarely have I seen for myself or anyone else that the first draft of plans are the final plans. Often you're making revisions. I mean, you very rarely, maybe 1 out of 100 times, have seen the plans be perfect the first time.
Right.
So it doesn't really happen. And so having that budget, because it's going to take that professional another week or two if you have revisions to go back and change things.
Yeah.
So we get through the whole planning process. The contractor and the designer are working together. They come up with these plans. What's the next step in the process?
So once the plans are done, is that what we're talking about? Once the plans
Yeah,
are done?
yeah.
Okay. If the contractor's already engaged at that point, then they can start ordering materials. Obviously, the plans are going in for to the city for permitting. They can start lining up their subcontractors. They can even apply for an early start permit, possibly depending on the scope of
Hmm.
work. There's definitely things that can be done if you have a GC already lined up versus waiting until drawings are done before you even put it out and to the contractor community to start bidding the job.
Right.
Um, so uh, yeah, so the project, it can accelerate a little bit again if you have people involved in earlier in the process. So bidding, while bidding is happening, procurement can be happening, subcontractors can be lined up, and so by the time the permit is in hand, we're hitting the ground running. So from that point, it's just getting it through all the different phases of construction until we get to the certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I've noticed too is if I'm aware of the time frame that the client has, and I'm also able to coordinate with the designer and the contractor, we can make educated decisions on what we may need to do with the space. Perhaps we are haven't fully executed the lease yet, and it might not be, we may not want to be spending all the money on the architect. It depends on what's the landlord's expense or not, but being able to make educated decisions on when to rush things, or perhaps on a buyer, maybe the money's gone hard, they've made it through the due diligence, the inspections have gone really well, and I've also noticed having the contractor engage then, as like to look over the inspection reports to see if anything maybe needs to be added as part of the plans is important. We're able to make educated decisions on maybe how to handle things from a deal perspective and negotiate appropriate free rent periods, or how to time everything so that the clock doesn't start ticking on the tenant paying rent, or for perhaps the buyer making a mortgage payment, kind of leveraging all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And the
You know,
permitting too can vary, and you need a professional who's aware of the changes from county to county to municipality.
yeah,
Like for instance, I think Orlando has had like a fast track process.
yeah. Anything under 5,000 square feet can go through that, and it's a couple of weeks versus 4 weeks
Yeah.
for permit review. You mentioned spending money on design services and stuff before you have a lease in hand, for instance. One thing that is that you could do, and again, sometimes landlords will provide a test fit for you if they're doing the build out. Um, when you're doing a lease negotiations, there's while after you have an LOI executed, and you're just kind of working out the details of the lease, it might be a good point at that point to go ahead and get a designer to do a test fit, if you're paying for it yourself. Sometimes they'll do it for free, sometimes it's just very cheap, and so you can probably jump a couple of weeks on the schedule by doing that.
Yeah.
But just wait until you have a lease executed before you move in from from schematic drawings into design development drawings, which is where the money is.
Well, to me, I sometimes tell the clients to leverage what's a few $100s here versus thousands of dollars a month in rent, and if
Yeah,
we're able to make a case to the landlord that perhaps the tenant has to share some of the budget because they have very specific needs, and just because of the economies of scale. But gathering that information and being able to negotiate appropriate enough amount of time for things. You don't want to be in one space paying rent, start having to pay rent at the other space, plus you're contributing some to the tenant improvement budget. So
yeah,
getting as much information in hand, sometimes even if it costs you a little bit of money, may save you thousands of dollars in the long term, is what I have found, and
absolutely.
I've taken to heart myself personally and done in my
Yeah,
own deals.
yeah, that's valuable advice to give a tenant that you're working with, and be able to coordinate all that.
So let's talk about the construction. So you've gotten through the plans. You have the permit in hand. How does that end up looking?
So once we have the permit in hand, are we talking like a typical schedule?
Yeah, typical schedule is probably you have to start with like you have to coordinate your vendors, your subcontractors based on what the absolute needs are. So what does that tend to look like? I know you have like a specific time frame from the construction, but you probably start with the demo, and then you have to go in order of filling out the infrastructure to then putting the finishing touches. Maybe someone hasn't been through a construction process before.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, on projects that have demo, obviously the first thing we do is demo. About the one of the more important parts of the construction process that I like to get a tenant involved in is when we do the layout. I'll have the walls just chalked out on the floor as to where they're actually going to be going. So I'll walk a tenant through the space and say, look, here's where your walls are going, just so you know, if there's any any changes whatsoever you need to make, now's the time to let us know about that so we can, address them before the walls start going up. So
Oh, that's a great idea. And
yeah,
that also leads me back to, I had been remiss in mentioning is right around the time we are about to finalize the plans before we actually go to permitting, I usually have the furniture vendor involved because they may, but depending on the configuration of the furniture, need to have outlets in a certain place and those types of drops and those types of things. Is that usually the case because
I,
it could
I
be weeks.
yeah, most of the time, I mean, I'm typically seeing furnitures taken into consideration pretty early by the designers. If it's a
Mhm.
designer that I've worked with, they typically know what the client's furniture plan is, and so if there are power poles needed for cubicles or floor box needed for a conference table, we'll know that before we start construction. So we have a pretty good idea of
Yeah.
where furniture is going, and a lot of times furniture has to be in place before we can get a final certificate of occupancy. Um, a lot of people don't realize that if the drawings show cubicles in an open area, well, those
Oh, yeah.
cubicles have to be in place because the fire department is going to want to see that there's no obstruction in any paths of egress. So if you find out that you didn't order furniture until late in the game and now we're not going to get a CO, then what you could do is go back and redo the drawings to get rid of the furniture so the drawings can be resubmitted without furniture.
Yes.
So that is something that definitely want to get your furniture vendor involved in early, because they also need to know when are we going to be completed so they can plan their crews accordingly to deliver and assemble furniture.
Often I found that the furniture vendors don't have a huge amount of warehouse space to store your furniture and wait for the construction to be completed.
Yeah.
So they need to be coordinating with the professionals. And so even if it's just to get your quotation, figure out what furniture you're going to order, it's really important to do that. And so so we were talking a little bit about the demo and then drawing out the walls on the floor.
Yeah.
Take me through a little bit more of the construction process.
Okay. So yeah, typically we'll once the layout is done, we'll go right into going vertical with the walls. Once the walls are framed up, we'll start running in all our mechanical, electrical, plumbing into those walls. And once those are all roughed in, we'll call for inspections. Once all those systems are inspected, we can go ahead and start closing up the walls, putting up hanging drywall. And then you start getting into your above ceiling work, all your mechanical, electrical, plumbing above ceiling, your lighting. And we've got typically anywhere from probably 10 to 15 inspections along the way
Wow.
from beginning to end. The rough-in inspections, the framing inspections, uh, all the electrical inspections, above ceiling inspections, HVAC inspections. So there's a lot of eyes being looked at the job throughout from start to finish. It's not just the GC obviously looking at it. It's the building department.
Hmm.
And we do keep the client. We have once a week progress meetings with the client. We generate a report showing all the activity we have. We have photos of the job that we take every day, put it into a weekly report. We have a schedule that gets updated every week, so everyone knows where we're at.
Oh,
Um,
that's amazing. Yes.
yeah. So everything's transparent. The client can come to the job anytime they want. They can call us anytime they want. But we make sure that they have more information than they even care to know about the job at any given
Yeah.
time. So, but yeah, so you know, there's activity going on every day. We're usually scheduled out at least a couple weeks in advance as far as who's going to be there on a particular day. So we know, you know, that things are moving and there's not going to be any downtime. You know, like I said, it takes typically, you know, 6 to 8 weeks to 12 weeks is a typical build out.
Yes.
Yeah, for most size jobs we do. Again, if you get into 10,000, 20,000 square foot build outs, you're going higher than that, obviously. But and then once we get done with our final inspection, we get our certificate of occupancy or certificate of completion if it's a second generation space, and then we just go right into your you know, your move in. At that point, the client can start moving in their personal belongings, and we'll be doing a punch list with the client
Mhm.
during that time. Our goal is to not have anything on the punch list when it's time to do a walk with the client. So we try to make sure everything is addressed before we get to that point, and hopefully have nothing on the list when they come through with either their architect or, you know, themselves or us. But that's the goal.
Absolutely. And, you know, every so often something may come up and they're like, hey, I wanted something this way and this didn't come out the way that I thought it was going to. And,
Yeah.
you know, those are the kinds of things you want to be hearing. But yeah. So what was I going to ask you is so you do the final walkthrough, making sure that you get the punch list, and then you get the final inspection certificate. So, and then again, it just depends on the project, how long that's going to be. Obviously, one municipality might add a couple more weeks to the process versus another one, in those types of things. So I think that's very helpful. So, and we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but typically they probably want to give themselves about five months on average for this
Yeah,
whole process.
I would say five months is probably a good number. 4 to 6 months.
Yeah. And that's excellent that you give reports, because a lot of business owners, that's what they're thinking about whenever they lay their head down on their pillow at night. It's like, oh my gosh, what, you know, how's this going? So to be proactive and provide that information is a great, valuable tool.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Great, great. Well, awesome to chat about this. So if anyone who is interested in talking to Bennett more about this, his number's 407-233-1849. His website is also Envision FL. So that's INVISIONFL.com. And please do subscribe to our channel so that you can hear more valuable content like this. So thank you so much, Bennett.
Thanks for having me, Amy. Appreciate it.